All right, so
I need call, I'll call you.
do you want to do the safety minute?
Thanks, folks.
I'm happy to, I was just gonna put it out there. Does anybody have a safety minute, a story or a notice or an observation that they'd like to share? I don't want to voluntold anybody, but Peter had a pretty good example this morning on our huddle.
Okay, I'll go. We was talking to a neighbor. We have construction where we live and checking around before you move your vehicle, right, in construction sites to see what might be there that might pick up in your tires. Could save you from putting yourself at risk further down the road with a flat.
Perfect.
Yep, good call. All right, well, Steve, go ahead and I say get going on the presentation. In the invite for this training, everybody, there were a few documents attached. The FAQ, there was a 4-step process and then the updated compact and cap brochure. So if you guys need access to those resources are also on SharePoint, and they will soon be updated on the website. So if you have any questions when we're done, just holler. There will be an assessment attached to this training at the end for those who it's required. You'll have to achieve an 80% or higher in order to have passed the test. So just like all the other product trainings, there will be a requirement on that. So stay tuned for the assessment when we're completed. Okay, Steve, all yours.
Okay, guys, many of you have probably watched some of these videos that I've done in the past, and we had previous management that felt the need for these to last an hour. I don't feel the need for that, and a lot of you already know what compact and cap is. We're going to review it, and for those that it's new to you, it is a trademarked, and I guess it's registered trademarked, Envirotech. It's a procedure. It's not a. It's a program. It's not a product. So we're going to go through and talk about it, and I'm going to try to get through this pretty quickly. But if you do have questions, you know, chime in and ask them along the way, and we'll try to get through this pretty quickly. Okay. All right. So let me see if I got it going. Okay. Before we get started, there's a couple things I want to talk to everyone about. We've got a bunch of new people. And some people that have been acquired from Texas Road and Sign on the call as well. And so I just want to do a little housekeeping before, because we still get asked questions about where do I find an SDS for a certain product. That's a question that's asked frequently. And we do our best to get it to you if you're in the field or something like that. And so I'll show you real quick how to find those. And then I'm going to go through a product choice decision tree that we have based on current ESI products. We do not have the blends from Texas. I don't have them listed on this tree yet, but I will eventually incorporate them in, and we'll look at that really quickly as well. So that's kind of prior to starting the presentation on compact and cap. So where do you find an SDS? If you have access to SharePoint, which everybody should pretty much have access, I'm not sure about Phil. But if you do have access, it's just in the ESI document portal, and you can go under general safety and compliance and its SDS sheets. You can find them there. That's a quick way to do it. There's another way that's quick. If you're in the field and you have your phone and you need to show somebody something, you could go to our website, and Amber's done a good job of putting them out there. And you can go to resources and find SDS sheets under resources on our website. And you can look up pretty much everything that we have there. Now, I will say the smart thing to do if you're going to talk with a customer or you're using a new product at a job site, just print them before you go. And then you don't have to worry about where to find them. Or print some that you know of products that you've sold recently and put them in a folder and keep them in your car. That way you can always have them with you. And if you have questions, you're prepared just to hand one over. It's pretty easy to do. They don't have to be in color or anything fancy like that. Black and white works fine. So that's enough said on SDS sheets, and hopefully everybody that's on the call will stop calling me and asking me where to get an SDS sheet. Not that everybody does, but it happens. Okay, so this is the decision tree, but I'm gonna break it down. This is the whole thing. It's not that complicated, but let's break it down as an unpaved surface. And what we have are really 4 options. We've got the compact and cap, which we're talking about today. You can do just plain dust control on an unpaved surface. You can do just straight stabilization. And then we have a few water-based programs with products, and I'll talk about those at the very end. So with compact and cap, we have dust control and stabilization. And there are 2 options here. You have a chloride-based option for compact and cap and a non-chloride-based option for compact and cap. And the chloride base is going to be in yellow. I kind of color coded it a little bit, taking Amber's lead and trying to make things more obvious. So you have options for both the compaction and the cap for the product. And I'll show you those in dust control and stabilization. Non-chloride, you have non-chloride caps and compaction options. So in dust control, you can have, and stabilization, you can have chloride dust control or chloride stabilization. You can also have non-chloride dust control and non-chloride stabilization as well. So the products under dust control for chloride, as we should know if you've been with the company for a while, we have Road Saver and Road Saver C, and we have Durablend and Durablend C for chlorides. For chloride stabilization, we have Basebind, and the most commonly used compaction aid or for stabilization that we currently use is a mag base or a calcium base compaction aid. Okay. So for non-chloride dust control, we have a couple options. We have the product DuraRenew, and if things progress like we hope they do, with the raw material for this, we'll have this as an option in the future. It's something we've tested and are working on in the lab. And another new product is DuraSynth. And many of you know about this product. If you don't, we can talk about it after the fact, but I just wanted to mention it. It's something that we have. And then for non-chloride stabilization, we have a product called Durabind. It depends on whether or not we get that raw material, but that's looking positive. And for water-based programs, we have water-based dust control, and we also have oil and gas that we do business with. Water-based dust control, currently we have Excision Pro, and oil and gas, we have Percent. Okay, so there's a lot of combinations and permutations we can use, but in the end, this decision tree is kind of it. There's not a lot more to it than this. It's pretty straightforward. You have a few options that you can mix and match, but that's what we're going to talk about with compact and cap. We're going to talk about how you go about physically doing the compaction and different options, and then we'll talk about a few other things as well. Okay, so for the agenda, I just want to talk about how compact and cap is a process. It's not a product. We'll talk about the compaction part, a little bit about road prep. I'm not going to go into road building at this time. We have Mike Coffey, who gives a fantastic presentation on road prep. We can talk about how we blend in different products, the compaction after we blend it in, using a steel drum, pneumatic rollers, and even traffic can be used. Then after that compaction is done, applying the cap to the surface. It can be a chloride or an enhanced chloride. We can use some type of synthetics or organics. And then how do we go about field testing after we've done compact and cap? We'll talk briefly about that. And then the last thing that we should all kind of have a short conversation about is customer expectations, setting them and understanding what the customer wants. So we'll do that quickly as well. So this compact and cap presentation is going to be very visual. I think it makes it easier to kind of see things than it is just to talk about them. But it's a process of using our products to add compaction products to the road as they're prepping the road to make the road have higher stability and have it last longer. And that's what our goal is. And then we are going to cap it with a dust pallet at the end. And so as we saw with the product graph that I put together, you can see there aren't a lot of products, but if you take and you add them all up and mix and match, there's a lot of options that you can come up with. So what we try to do is meet the needs of our customers and what they're asking for with some of the product options that we have. And the whole goal behind Compact and Cap is to increase the performance of the road. Okay, so Compact and Cap is really a 4-step process, and I've talked a little bit about this, about how we're going to try to evaluate the road and try to understand what the customer needs before we get started. And typically, customers that want some type of stabilization and dust control have high volume roads or high need roads. It's usually the roads that are most difficult in the county that they want extra work done on. And so we need to understand what they really want to achieve before we do anything. And there are things we can do. We can go out and evaluate the road just by looking at it. Sometimes, it might be a good idea to get a 5-gallon bucket and send it to the lab, and we can do some testing as well. So that's a possibility. Then step 2, 3, and 4 is the actual application itself, the road prep. We need to understand how they do road prep, and we'll go through that a little bit, what type of compaction they're capable of doing. And as far as the cap being applied, typically Envirotech applies the cap, but there are a lot of counties that like to do it themselves. So if they do take our products and buy them from us, it is a good idea, at least initially, to be there when they first use our products to make sure that they're being applied properly. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about road prep and what occurs. Very simply, most counties have motor graders, and they can spray liquid products on the road and blend it in by using the blade to mix. It just depends on how much they cut the road. Typically, counties will cut out all the defects, and that's anywhere from 2 to 4 inches deep to get rid of the defects in the road. So you have to be aware of how much water is going to be required to just cut the road, or if they're using one of our compaction products, then how much compaction products they need. And we'll talk a little bit about that. There are other counties, and this is Weld County in Colorado. They use the rippers on the back of their motor graders and other road building equipment, and they just rip the road, and they basically plow the road and give us a place to put the compaction aid, and we apply it right into these grooves that they create. So it sits really nicely, and then allows them to mix it. There's a lot of different ways to mix it other than using just a motor grader. This is a piece of machinery that Weld uses. It basically is it's very much like a motor grader, but it's smaller, so it's just like a reclaimer. So it's just smaller. It's only like 4 or 5 feet wide, so it takes more passes. Weld County also has a reclaimer that's 10 feet wide, so they can pretty much do a road in a couple passes, so they can reclaim the entire road. This is a photograph of a wrap road in eastern Colorado that they do about a mile or so every year, and they blend in base bind for compaction aid for this road, but they reclaim the entire road, and then they apply the compaction aid to this reclaimed road, and then they mix it in with motor graders, and then they compact it. The next photograph is a photograph after they've mixed in some of the base bind product into this reclaimed road. And you can see it's a very dirty wrap, but their roads last 6 to 7 years without having to do much of anything different. So it works out really well for them. On top of this road, after they do compaction and compaction aid, they chip seal it. So that's why, it's just over time, it's becoming a wrap enhanced road base. Okay, so for compaction aid applications, pretty straightforward. Our truck easily apply this like we do dust palliative. And there's, like I said before, there are several options. We have mag and calcium compaction aid, base bind, which is magnesium based, and then the non-chloride based Durabind, which should be a product in the next year or so for us to be able to use. In very sensitive areas, it would be a good option. And we've tested it, and it works really well. Compaction aid rates, we typically recommend a 1/4 gallon a square yard. So that would mean if we said we want to go to our maximum recommended depth of 4 inches, it would be a gallon. But I'm going to tell you guys what I typically do when I'm on a job site and I'm talking with people, and some of you have heard me say this. What I say is that let's do 3/4 of a gallon, and if we need a little water, we'll add a little water, and say let's do 3 inches. But when they try to cut a road at 3 inches or try to reclaim it just right at 3 inches, typically the blade or reclaimer will hit a spot and it'll go a little bit deeper. And 3 inches works exceptionally well, but we usually go a little bit deeper than that. And 3/4 of a gallon of all of our compaction products work really well. It's not optimum, but it is budget conscious. That's why I say a 1/4 gallon square yard. You can quote them that, and then when they get a little sticker price shock with it, you can go back and say, hey, typically we found that if we do 3/4 of a gallon and we try to stay at 3 inches, we can save them a little bit of money, and the roads are turning out really well at that depth as well. So that's just something to think about.
Hey, Steve, there's a question, what's RAP?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, RAP is reclaimed asphalt product is what it stands for. So when a county or a city reclaims or pulls all this old asphalt pavement off of a road, a lot of times they'll take it and they'll store it in a yard somewhere. And so that becomes available to the county, city for unpaved roads. You can mix that in like you would mix in gravel, but it does have asphalt left on top of it. So if it's really old pavement, there's not a lot of that asphalt emulsion left, so it doesn't bind great, but it makes good gravel. So that's why that road was so dark, is because there is asphalt left on top of the gravel that's been mixed into that road. So I'm sorry, I should have explained what RAP was.
Hey, Steve, can you clarify the 0.25 and the 0.75 as it
Sure.
relates to?
Sure. So compaction aid rates, a 1/4 gallon, a square yard per inch. So we're trying to stabilize the road under the drivable surface. And so a 1/4 gallon is not a lot, but for every inch that we go down, we want to add at least that much. So if we're going down just 3 inches, that would give us 0.75 gallons per square yard. And so we don't apply that much at one time. If we're going to do 3/4 of a gallon, we do like a 0.38 shot one way, let it absorb a little bit, and come back and do it again. And then we mix it in to the 3 inches. But the road has been prepped and ready, as you can see in this photograph. It has 3-inch grooves that have been raked into the road, so the product sits there and it absorbs pretty well before we start mixing. That answer your question, Peter?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so this is just a video of one of our products being applied. This was actually an experimental product that we did a couple of years ago. The truck in the video is the first time that truck had ever been used, and that's the truck that was purchased for Ohio. So the first time that truck was used, it used experimental products. But I like to show this video for a couple reasons. It shows that we have stuff like this in case you're giving presentations and you want to show drone video. We have some drone footage, but it also shows how well our trucks are able to apply product, because this product has this kind of purple hue to it, and you can see that it's a nice even application applied by our trucks. Okay, so that's an application of a compaction aid right there. All right, so there are a lot of ways to blend in compaction aid or mix it in afterwards. And if you look real close, you can see ambers right there in the reclaimer. But this is Weld County, and what they like to do is they rake their road, put the product on it, and then they just use the reclaimer and reclaim the surface. All right, so that's one way to do it. Another way to do it, this is in Hubbard County, Minnesota, pretty close to the Canadian border, and they have, instead of rakes on the back, they have this blade system on the front of their motor graders, and you can see they mixed it in, and you can see this road was really hard, and when they were mixing some of the compaction product in, you know, was breaking up into big chunks, but we were able to work with that with our compaction aid and soften everything up and make it blend really nicely. After you've done a compaction application, if it's really exceptionally hot and dry, like you got in Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Texas, you guys down there know this. If you mix something in, even if it's a mag product and it's windy and hot, there are times before you're able to finish the road that you want to add water to the surface so things don't dry out too much. I'm not going to talk a lot about soil prep and all of that, but there is something called optimum moisture for compaction. And every road base has a slightly different level of water that it needs to compact at its maximum. Dry road base does not compact and it does not hold together. So it's important to at least have a water truck around while you're doing this type of work to make sure that your road doesn't dry out before you finish the prep. Okay, so that's part of it. That's additional moisture that might be needed. Okay, so you can see here, this is the road that water truck was on, and they're blending the product. And behind the motor grader mixing in the product, there is a steel drum compactor that's compacting the road. And it appears like, well, he's not compacting anything because he's just moving all the product off to the side that's in the road base. But the reality is it's a good idea to compact as much as you can for as long as you can, because the more compaction that we can get on these roads, the longer they're going to last. I'll show compaction in a minute. This is another method on a road that it has recently been paved. It's a road that we've worked on for a long time that had about 3,000 to 4,000 cars a day on it. It's called Owl Canyon, but this is how we used to do Owl Canyon. They wouldn't shut down the road, but we'd use a reclaimer, and the reclaimer would push the ESI truck, and we would inject, like in this case, inject base bind into the road as they were reclaiming it. Okay, and I'll show you a photograph of this application in a second. Now, that's kind of it. Those are the methods that are used for mixing in products. As you guys know, a lot of counties don't have reclaimers. They don't have all this fancy equipment that's used. They just have motor graders, and that's totally fine. We can work with any county with any type of equipment that they have to do this process. So this program works everywhere. It's just, it makes it a lot nicer and it goes faster if you have something like a reclaimer. Let's talk real quick about compaction. So now we've got the road, we've added the product, it's ready to be compacted. What kind of equipment's out there that can be used? This is a county in Colorado that they compact while they blade. So they're constantly compacting. This is near Salida, Colorado. I forget the county. It's one of Sabrina's customers. But they have this piece of equipment called a final pass. And so you can see these pneumatic tires on the back, and they're offset from each other, so it compacts pretty well. I'm sorry that that's kind of dark to look at, but it's supposed to show you that the wheels are offset and it's compacting. Here's what it looks like as it's working. So it's just another way that they can compact. In this county, you know, they just don't have the number of employees that other counties have, and so they didn't have somebody that can drive just a pneumatic compactor or even a steel drum roller. So they compact while they're doing the work. Okay, this is in Park County, Colorado. This is another type. It's called walk and roll, I think. And it's just another type of compaction device that is used. And yeah, it is a walk and roll. And there are two sets of pneumatic tires here as well. They're offset, so it's compacting as they're working. Right, so this is in Hubbard County. This is the first time I'd ever seen anything like this. They have these trailers that they pull with their F-350s, and they load these trailers up with, you know, basically concrete that they've broken up from other parts of the county, and they put it in here, and it's just a real heavy trailer, but it's very similar to what we were just looking at. It's a pneumatic compaction device, and so the wheels are offset, so it does a pretty good job of compacting. Right. And then you can compact while you reclaim, and this is that photograph that I had of the ESI truck with the reclaimer. what Larimer County in Colorado does while they're doing this is about 98 degrees out. They're trying to maintain the moisture content in the road by compacting the surface as we're reclaiming. They're trying to keep all that moisture in because they're going to come back and they will reblade this surface to set the grade on the road properly, but and make sure everything's mixed in. They'll probably add a little water to it so it's at a better moisture, but it's not the final compaction. It's a compaction that is done to maintain moisture in the road. It kind of caps the surface with a dry layer and holds everything underneath damp. So I thought it was just interesting that there are lots of options about how you go about compacting. There's some optimal ways, but the best way for every county is to work with them on what they know works for them. Whatever road prep is the way that they have found works best with their road base, that's what we work with. So, we can have opinions about the best way to do things, but if a county has one guy on a blade and he has to do the steel drum roller or the pneumatic roller after the fact, then he's obviously, doesn't have all these options that we're showing right here. So we just work with him and try to figure out how to make the road the best we can. Okay, so here's steel drum roller. One thing I'll point out about the steel drum roller, look at the back side of this. If that was the final pass of the steel drum roller and we put a cap on top of that, after it was done, all of those divots from that aggressive tire in the back, they would be in the road forever. So what I recommend when I'm on a job site, and especially on something that's a new product, I always recommend that the steel drum roller rolls this backwards. So they take and they just turn around and they have the steel drum roller behind them. So we get rid of all those tire marks because we don't want those on the road at the end. This product will pool in those little divots and things like that. So there's just a few tricks that we can do that are really beneficial. So let me show you one other steel drum compaction. This is a drone video from that one road that we did in Weld County. You can see that purple product that was experimental. But this is a steel drum roller and it is working the road. And you can see he has aggressive tires as well, but if you look to the left, you can see that he's gone backwards on part of it, and he's removing the tire marks as he's working, and eventually he will roll the entire road backwards to get rid of those tire marks because we don't want those in the road at the end. And finally, for compaction, the best compactor for not leaving tire marks is to have a dual steel drum roller. And this was a photograph that I took a couple weeks ago in Ouray County here in Colorado. And we did a compaction product. We did base bind underneath a road that was chip sealed. So now we have base bind under a chip seal road, and we're pretty excited. It went really well. And so that's something pretty new for us. We've done a lot of caps on top of roads before, our chemical caps, but this is one of the first times where we set out to show that base bind could be used underneath a chip seal road. So we're excited to see how it turns out. Okay, that's methods. The final thing is traffic compaction. Now, we have several roads in Colorado that we do dust control on, and Dan and Jason are the two primary people that do compacting caps using traffic. The advantage they have is that there's a lot of really heavy trucks going to these oil wells and things like that. So if we put compaction aid in a road and we let the traffic compact it on one of their roads, we know that there's going to be a lot of traffic and it's going to be heavy and it's going to do a good job of compaction. Now, if it doesn't have that type of traffic that's real heavy, you need about 200 cars a day to really compact the road, because you'll have people move around on the road and there won't just be 4 tire tracks on the road. They'll move around throughout the day on the road and compact most of the road. And it will get compact enough in a day or two that will be satisfied with that there's good enough compaction before we put a cap on top. So we can go through and do a road if they don't have any way to compact, if there's enough traffic. And so, you know, some people might think 100 cars is enough, 150, something like that. But if it's at least 200 cars a day, then you're probably pretty good at getting the road compacted. But traffic compaction is better than no compaction at all. So if somebody wants to do a compacting cap and they don't have any compaction equipment, they don't have any rollers or anything like that, and they still want to put it in their road, then the ideal would be to put the compaction product in the road, let traffic compact it, and come back in a couple days and do the cap. It's going to get dusty because we don't have any dust palleted on there, but within a couple days it should be compacted well enough that we would be able to come back and cap it. Okay. So let's talk real quick about some of the capping products. We have chlorides and enhanced chlorides, and I think most of you have seen this graph before. So we have Road Saver, which is basically its viscosity doesn't change with temperature. It freezes at minus 30, so it's not something we worry about getting cold. DuraBlend, on the other hand, at about 50 degrees, the viscosity, that's 50 degrees temperature of the product, not 50 degrees ambient temperature outside. You know, it takes a long time for the product to cool down in the summertime, but we've seen that happen when a truck from Evans goes up and is at 9,000 feet and has to sit in a parking lot overnight, and in the summertime the temperature drops down to 32. The next day they have a hard time spraying because the product's still too cold, so it has to warm up in the sun a little bit before we can spray it. So it's just something to be aware of if you're working in cold temperatures. Now, we do have a product that eliminates this, and many of you have used it. There is a product called MEP, which is designed to work in colder temperatures, and there's a product called CEP. And they're selling a lot of CEP right now in Minnesota because they've found that it works really well, and they don't ever have any problems with the cold temperatures, with the roads being cold, so they can start earlier. But these are the two main products here, DuraBlend and Road Saver, viscosity wise. And that's what DuraBlend looks like when it comes out of the back. If you've never seen it, it's got a very viscous look to it. Looks almost like wax. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what our capping products can and cannot do, chloride wise. And this is a good example of weather resistance. It's not weather proofing the road, but you have one road, and it's actually the same road looking in two different directions. One road that has just Road Saver on it during a rainstorm, and another road that has DuraBlend. And you can see the DuraBlend side in this photograph. It's shedding water. It's not absorbing water. Obviously, both roads have the same traffic because it's the same road. So if you look at it, you can see that the Road Saver side is pretty soft and the DuraBlend side is still pretty tight. So DuraBlend brings that level of weather resistance to the cap, and that's something that is an important point when you're talking about the differences between the two products. Saver and DuraBlend. Guess I should have done that a little quicker. Okay, so we also have tested and used synthetics for capping on surfaces. This is the road that we did with Weld County with experimental products, and they work pretty well. They're much more expensive than our products. We were expecting this road to last about 2 years, but this road is in an agricultural area, and it receives a lot of heavy agricultural equipment that have aggressive tires. And it made it a little over a year, but on a cost basis, it was just a little expensive. But Envirotech basically paid for half the cost of doing this road. We wanted to see how well it would work, and the county paid for the other half. Didn't really last much longer than our products. At first, it looked really great, but we do have access to different types of synthetic products if it's something that you have customers that are interested, but our current products work pretty well. And so anyhow, yeah, I just wanted to let you know it's stuff that we've done. Right. Oops, did I go one too far? Yeah. Okay. So this is another synthetic. It's called Durasynth. This is a product that we are currently selling. It's a very environmentally sensitive product. We tested it in Hubbard County, and what they said about this product and the emulsion of Durasynth tested on these 2 half-mile sections. They had a very difficult time when they went to redo this road in May. We did this back in June of last year. It still had very good dust control a year later. And they really liked the road. They had a lot of really positive comments about how well the dust control worked and why can't we do this in the entire county. It's a more expensive product, but they gave us an opportunity to see how well it worked, and it worked exceptionally well. And John Johansson was the driving force behind getting us this test, and the county was really impressed. They would love to use the product, but it's a little bit expensive for them to use on their county roads. But as they said, it was very difficult. This was a compacting cap with Durabind and the Durasynth on top. So it was still working after all of the snow in northern Minnesota that they had, and they were really impressed with it. And they hated to plow it under, but they wanted to keep the road consistent. And they turned this road into a CEP road, and I was on it a month or so ago, and it was in really great shape, and they really liked the products. Well, this is just what it looks like going down. It looks like all of our other clear products. There's not anything different in it, and you can see how dusty the road is on the other side. And this gave about 8 to 10 months of really good dust control. All right, so there's Peter. This is a product from one of our organic products, and like I said, it may be becoming a staple in the future. This was a test at a dude ranch in Colorado, just to try it the first time. We've since made some modifications to it. This was kind of the first try of this product. Didn't last a long time, but the customer was happy with the fact that it's an organic based product. So this kind of gives you an idea of what it looked like. Kind of looks like LIG, but it's a little different. We've made some modifications to it to make it work a little better from the lab guys. Okay, so that's what it looks like going out. That's Tyson from the West Coast, standing right there. But it gives you an idea of what it looks like. It looks a lot like LIG if you're used to looking at that. Okay, so here's a compact and cap road that is now currently a paved road. That's after 14 months of using Basespine as the compaction aid and Durablend as the cap. And that's the road that we did the reclaimer on. So you can see that if the road is prepped properly and the cap is applied properly, which our drivers always do, they can last a long time. And so when customers want something that's going to last more than 6 to 8 months, this is definitely a good option. Okay, so I have a few more slides that are just kind of data, and then we can chat a little bit about customer expectation, but I'm trying to wrap this up quickly. So I'm going to show you guys some data that we took in Minnesota, and let you see how we evaluate a road to see if it's working very well. This is the Dura Renew test. This is the emulsion with Durasynth and that organic product. And the green line is, or the teal line is before anything was done to the road. And the yellow line below is after 4 months. And the red line across there is visible dust. So there's virtually no visible dust after 4 months. This data was compiled. The initial data that you can see all the dust that's going up. Anything above that red line is dust that's flying off the back of the car. You can see it. Anything below the red line you can't see. Our dust meters have the ability to look at PM1, PM2.5, and PM10. That's the size particles of the dust that's generated. So we're measuring all of those particles at the same time, and there literally was no dust visible at all at 4 months. And that data was collected by John Johansson. I did not go back and do this. He went up to northern Minnesota and over a period of 4 months collected data for us. So thanks to him for actually getting out there and showing that we can quantitatively look at how well our roads are doing. So this is another graph that kind of shows the same thing. The average dust as you drive down the road before the product and the average dust 4 months afterwards. There's hardly any dust that can be measured. This is the Duracint road. It's a little different than the emulsion. By the way, this road that we did this test on is a logging road, and big heavy trucks with logs driving down up and down this a lot. So there's a lot of heavy traffic on this road. So these roads were driven on constantly in the summertime. So they performed really well. This is basically the same type of data that we looked at before, just a different section, one with Duracint instead of the emulsion. And it did really well. The reason it has a little bit more dust is there's an access road that enters onto this section. And so there was untreated road being drug out onto this Duracint section, and over time the gravel would migrate down the road. So it made it a little bit dustier, but it's still not visible. We could measure it, but you couldn't see it. And this is another example. The average dust before Duracint was really high, and then afterwards was almost not measurable. Okay, so that's some of the field results. And I can show you or tell you a little bit about what their engineers said. The two sections that had the Duracint and the emulsion on those sections, as I stated before, worked exceptionally well. It worked until they decided to make the entire section of road CEP. They wanted to keep everything the same, so they redid the entire road. There's 2.5 mile sections, actually a 5 mile section that they completely redid. They're comparing our products right now to a product called Base One. And when I was there, they were really unhappy with our competitors' products, and they couldn't be happier with our products. So you need to understand, if you're not from that area, that our products are working really well across the country. DuraBlend works really well in Colorado, and CEP is a DuraBlend as well. And it's working really well there. Okay. Last thing is customer expectations. I don't think I have anything after that. Understanding what they want is really important here. If they have roads that they're having really difficult times with, that's when it's your job, and I'm involved in this as well, of finding out if the pain of that road is something they're willing to try some different things on, like this whole compact end cap type process. And if they are, then once they commit and want to do that, it's our job to set expectations. And when it's the first time that we've ever worked with the county on something like this, I think it's a good idea to have a trial. Our testing is done with all of our products, but a trial is where they pay for it. And we trial things and we monitor it and see how well it works. And you don't do 15 miles of this, you do a mile or two and see how well it goes. And then maybe the next year you sell them 15 miles worth. So there's a lot of options that you have with all of our products in different processes that we know that work well, that you can go through and talk to your customers. And that's kind of it. I hope that it's been a little informative for you guys. I know that a lot of you have done compact and cap before, but we're trying to make everybody have the same knowledge base and understand everything that we've done throughout the years with this program. And hopefully there's a nugget or two that you could take from this. And if anyone has any questions or any examples that they want to talk about that they've done this process before, open it up for questions. And thanks for your time.
Steve, I have a question.
Yeah.
You talked about going back to CEP with that Minnesota customer after the Duracint application. Out here in the West, we've learned that if there's petroleum-based products or oil-based products in some of these roads previously, it doesn't always play well with chlorides.
Right.
to switch over. Are we having any of those sort of concerns with these synthetic products? Are they playing well with the chlorides both directions?
Like the Durabine product, we put that in a road in Minnesota that had the base one product, which is a sodium silicate, which basically takes the road and crystallizes the minerals in the road to make it hard. So that's an inorganic product. As far as how it's going to blend, since it is organic, I would assume that it would play pretty well, but it's a trial basis. I mean, once we get the product out there, let's get a section of road, Jason, and see what happens. And like I said, let's set some expectations, and I think we'll succeed, but we need to find out. I mean, if they've been using something like Penzapress or something like that, that type of a product that is very oil based, it's going to still have residual. And so until we do some testing, we won't really know.
Excuse me, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Phil.
I have a lot of what's called oil sand in Texas. And they discard oil and they put it in sand and they put it down and it becomes a road bed.
Yeah.
And as an example, in the heat like we're having now, it pushes the oil out and it migrates to the edges.
Oh,
I have put Basebind, the product that we've used forever, and I have had it on roads after 4 to 6 inches of cultivating the material and put it in and compacting it, that have done almost no maintenance in 30 years.
yeah. See, there you go. That's perfect. But you have an organic additive that you're putting in that's probably adhering really well to that other oil-based product. The additive that you had in your product, it works well.
So Steve, maybe talk a little bit. The first step of the program is evaluation in the context of that question.
Right.
How much material for those that might not know would the lab want to be able to do an evaluation and see if there's some incompatibilities to deal with?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Peter. I mentioned it earlier. If you have a customer that looks like they're going to do a large amount of compact and cap, even if they're going to do a small amount, and it's somebody that we haven't done business with in the past, if we can get 5 gallons or 2 5-gallon buckets, because we have to sieve it to be able to do certain tests with it, because we can't just take the straight road base and make samples out of it, because the rock itself is too big. So we sieve some of the big rock out and we work with the finer material and some of the smaller rock. So that 5 gallons doesn't really equate to 5 gallons once we sieve it. So if we want to do Proctor molds where we look for strength testing, or we want to do longevity testing with the Hamburg device and mix products in, we need material to do that with. And so, that's what we'd be asking for, to do an evaluation in the lab.
So just to repeat it, 2 5-gallon buckets.
2 5-gallon buckets would be sufficient to do the testing that we'd want to do.
Can you used everything in a cubic yard. Can you make, some of these people that I have as customers can't figure that out. But if you tell me take 7/8 of a gallon in 1 linear foot on an 18-foot road, they understand.
I just created a small calculator to convert back and forth from feet to gallons.
Okay, because it's some of these boys aren't the sharpest tools in the shed.
Yeah, I think, that's it. It's part of the, evaluation process, right? You have to understand the customer and be able to communicate. It's like a foreign language if you're talking. I mean, I get questions asked by Javier, who lives down in Chile, who we've worked with for years. And he asks me questions all the time about liters per square meter. And I mean, I understand those really well, but I mean, I'm so used to speaking in gallons per square yard that I have to sit there and have to do the conversion every single time he asks me. Yeah, I mean, does anybody really understand what 1.25 liters per square meter means? I mean, really?
Are you kidding? Are you asking me?
So, I mean, he just asked me that today. I just had that question today. Will this work? And I'm like, I don't know. Give me
Well-
a second to calculate it.
The majority of the world, maybe.
Yeah, well, we don't live in the majority of the world, Peter.
I know. It's something that didn't come up, but we're doing right is helping people with a more durable cap, which typically is chip seal.
Yeah, well,
So
that's what I did. I did state that they were doing that in Uray. And that's a test that we did this summer, and it's ongoing. So obviously chip seal is expected to last a long time. So what they're looking for is a stabilization under that chip seal that lasts a long time, that doesn't break away. They have chip seal that's been down for a year, and they spent a lot of money on stabilizing it, and it's failing from underneath. So they're really hopeful, and we're hopeful about Basebine because we do have examples of Basebine working for years and years and years. I don't know. I don't think Sabrina's on the call, but she had a customer that we used to work with in Colorado, and that's that road that I showed that has wrap milled into it. And I think there's a section of road that we did 6 years ago, the last time I was out there, and that chip seal is perfect. There's no cracks, and the edges of the road look good. And so if it's stabilized properly and compaction is good, our products work well. All right, anybody else have any questions? I tried to do this faster. It looks like I'm at about 43 minutes from when I started, so. An hour.
I think the clock for the recording is running at a little bit faster speed.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, hey, if any of you guys have questions about any of this stuff that I went through, I'm available for phone calls, and we can even have team meetings if you want. So I'm always here, or I'm in the field, and I'm out and about, but you can always contact me, and I'll do my best to help you understand or help you with a customer if you have one.
Thank you, everybody, for joining today, and we'll have another training on Friday, same time, 10 o'clock Mountain Time. So if you want to join again, or if your peers didn't have a chance to join, then there's another opportunity at the end of the week. So again, if you have any questions, Steve is a great resource for that. If you have questions on material, marketing material, let me know. Steve knows where those things are too. And we're here to help you guys out, give you whatever resources you need to make your job successful. So don't hesitate to let us know what you need when it comes to conversations with your customers, and to just make you more comfortable with your knowledge on this program. So that said, everybody have a great day, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amber.
Bye.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
See you later.
Thank you, Steve.
Good guys.